get back to me some of the film.
Has
Martin.
Bishop Tutu ever had one of the Montgomery to Memphis cassettes? Have you ever seen the
No.
documentary on
Have you seen the,
Martin?
No,
We need to get you one of those
Yeah,
to
I'll
take
get
with you,
one.
yes.
because
We'll
it,
get one.
it sort of gives you a sense of what our struggles were.
Yeah.
Is the video best of the film? You know,
No, I think a video
is the
easier.
best. Then you can
Change it to VHS.
We have a
have
VHS. We'll get
VHS.
that for you.
Yeah, VHS,
Uh-huh.
Okay.
All we have to do is get Stoney will get it from at the center. We
Yeah.
can do that.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's an excellent thought.
That'll be tremendous.
Well, Bishop Desmond Tutu, Nobel Prize winner from South Africa, a great Christian friend, Mrs. Coretta Scott King, on the eve of the anniversary celebrating the birth of Martin Luther King as a national holiday. And I'm Andrew Young, the mayor of this city, and trying to do something with a new cable network. But Coretta, did you think we would have this holiday for Martin this quick? And I don't know whether Bishop Tutu can think of 17 years from now in South Africa what you might be able to accomplish in view of what's happened in this time.
I really knew it would come, and the question was whenever the people decided to make it happen, because I saw how it was possible to, through legislation, bring laws into being once we mobilize people for it. Even in the midst of an administration that was not very favorable or even hostile, I felt that it could happen, but I knew it would happen after the 20th anniversary March on Washington. That was in 1983, which Alan Bozak was one of the main speakers. Because what we did was we were successful in mobilizing over 500,000 people to come to Washington to commemorate the Diaper Dream celebration, and therefore the first legislative priority we focused on was the holiday legislation. So it's just a matter of that network lobbying with these senators and representatives. That works when you do have a democracy that's very imperfect, but more perfect certainly than some other places.
You've got a different set of circumstances, though. And I know it's hard to see 20 years down the road, but I think maybe the only way we can stay alive in this business is to look a little further down the road.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's quite exhilarating to be here at this time. We've had very, very considerable inspiration from what many of you have done, and especially, of course, what Martin Luther King Jr. has done, and the many people associated with him. No, I know that the inconceivable will happen. We have no doubt at all that we are going to be free, black and white in South Africa. And it'll probably be sooner than later, because we having a tremendous thing, young people with a wonderful level of determination bordering on recklessness. And I think the world has been aroused. Certainly your country has been aroused in an extraordinary way. I mean, as we've been going from place to place, the response we've been getting from people, the welcome, has been quite overwhelming, and people really care about what is happening in South Africa. And they, after all, forced this administration to impose sanctions when it didn't want to do so, so that we are celebrating also people power, as you were saying.
Yes, well, that was a part of one legislative proposal had to do with the Anti-Apartheid Act, which later, the president issued an executive order. But Bill Gray told me in 1983, after the March on Washington, he said, we don't have enough votes to pass this legislation. And I said, Bill, this network that we have need to be put in action. I said, we can do it. And of course, during the Black Congressional Caucus in Washington, we talked about it, and people got the word out, and within a few weeks, it passed.
Absolutely.
The first step, and then it went on to be revised. So it works.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it has
you've
worked.
put a date on your government. And I think in the agreement with the school children that if certain changes didn't come by March,
Yeah.
that there would be a total withdrawal from the schools and that you would then call for sanctions?
Well, I'm just trying to indicate to the world how reasonable we black South Africans are and continue to be. I mean, you'd have thought that in a situation such as the one that we have, with so many deaths that have happened, with the army quartered on the civilian population, that black people on the whole in South Africa, I'm sorry, would say to hell with white people. But you saw how our people execrate racism when a white woman dies who has been a stalwart in the struggle. They didn't say she's white. They said she's a tremendous person and paid such a warm tribute to her in her funeral when 20,000 people pitched up at the funeral, over 90% of these being black. We are trying to say to the government, we are reasonable. We still want to bring about change in our country reasonably peacefully. And the demands or requests that we make are reasonable requests. We say lift the state of emergency, withdraw the troops, unban student organizations that you have banned, release our political prisoners who are our leaders, allow exiles to come back home, and then talk. We want to negotiate, but then if they don't, we need to mount a campaign, a steady campaign, which is a moral campaign, disobeying unjust laws, which, as you know, St. Augustine of Hippo said, an unjust law is no law at all. And we hope, that the world will realize that ours is a moral cause, and that if violence happens, as it will probably keep happening and escalating, the fault must be put squarely where it belongs. The blame must be put squarely where it belongs with the government of South Africa.
Martin used to quote Victor Hugo and said, when men are placed in darkness, crimes will be committed.
Yes.
But the guilty are not just those who commit the crimes, but the ones who create the darkness.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, that we are beginning to see here what people can do. I've been very exhilarated by the students. Recently people were saying that students on campuses were no longer interested in issues. But when I went and visited some of the campuses in 1984, it was quite remarkable.
Well, your timing is absolutely perfect. It confirms what I've always believed, and that is that God's in charge of this movement.
Absolutely.
Yes,
That
yes.
when you set a March date, that's exactly the time that on our campuses in this country, most of our students will be, it's spring, and every spring they get involved in something. And for a confrontation to begin occurring in South Africa in March or toward the end of March, it means that American students and British students, or European students in general, students from other Asian and African countries will be in a position to mobilize in support
Yes.
of your actions.
Well, we want to say thank you very much for all the inspiration, the leadership that people like yourselves have given. I was telling people that you were one of the best things to have happened for any administration in the United States, because all the statements that you were making about South Africa helped to enhance the prestige of this country considerably in the black community, because at the moment, with constructive engagement, the name of your country is mud. And we thrill to some of your exploits and achievements. And when you ran for mayor, it was as if we were all involved in that campaign. And if you had failed, we would have sort of run home with our tails between our hind legs. But you enabled us to walk tall. And of course, Coretta, you too are a tremendous person. You have had a wonderful galvanizing effect on many people around the world and in our own country. And you have struck a blow for liberation, for women's liberation, for people's liberation. And I just want to say thank you very, very much on behalf of so many back home for all that you people stand for, have done, are doing, and will continue to do.
Well, you said the other day in Hartford, I think, that when the prayers of the world focus on South Africa, that it can't help but change for the better.
Absolutely.
And let me assure you that you are constantly in our prayers.
Thank you.
And you and your family. By the way, how are the children? And why don't you tell us particularly about your son who was arrested just a minute, so we don't think of you as just a great hero, but also as a father that has lots of struggles with his own family to consider at this time.
Well, I should say very quickly that people shouldn't get away with the idea that the Tutus have suffered, because we haven't suffered as much as many other people. I was glad when my son was detained for 14 days under the emergency regulations for using rather picturesque language against a policeman. He was probably expressing the views of many of us, except that we probably wouldn't have used the same kind of language. But it did show how arbitrary the power is, and that you can be put into jail for virtually nothing. He's out now, but he said it was one of the most moving and growth experiences for him. We've got 3 daughters at the present time in this country. Our eldest daughter is accompanying us with her husband. Our next daughter is married and is in Hartford. She works for a bank, and a development bank, and she's married an American. And then we have our youngest who is at Howard, enjoying herself and about to finish a degree in electrical engineering. And they've had a great time, I think.
And we know, I think Naomi, is that the one at Howard? The
No,
other one.
Naomi is at Hartford.
Hartford, oh yes.
Paul is is the one who is at Howard. Then of course, I
Yes.
mean, the mother of the children.
Yeah.
She's around too.
Well,
But she's organized domestic workers.
Yes.
And that, you know, I always say that that's the force that probably did more in our movement than we could ever credit them for. And I knew it in my election, that all of these people who are going every day to work in somebody else's kitchen essentially are really spreading love and understanding. And when they took my literature and they said, you need to vote for this man, they did. But, and even in Zimbabwe,
Yes.
in old Rhodesia, I saw the power of the domestic workers to change the whites privately. And so the work that your wife is doing, I think, is every bit as revolutionary as what's going on in the street. In fact, given a choice of some of the kids in the street and some of these strong black women
Yeah.
who have fought for freedom and who know what's at stake, really the movement is going to go as much by their power, if not more so, than by the young people.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree, and I do have to take my hat off to the women. I mean, they are a tremendous force for good, and when they decide we've had enough, then the walls of apartheid will come tumbling down, and we really have some extraordinary stalwarts. I mean, Mrs. Sisulu, Winnie Mandela, and so many others who have supported the struggle and been committed to it.
Well,
And
we
I-
want to thank you for being with us in Atlanta, for sharing with us on this King celebration holiday, and for allowing the Martin Luther King Center for Social Change to award you its highest honor. We are honored by your willingness to receive it and by your continued service to the cause of justice and the cause of humanity and nonviolence.
Thank you very, very much
And
indeed.
may I say a word? I feel so deeply honored and humbled that you would spend this time with us and to be that recipient when we invited you to be here for the first federal holiday. we had high hopes, but we didn't know that they would be fulfilled. And you have done this, and already with the message you brought us at Ebenezer. Ebenezer is a deeply spiritual church, but it'll never be the same because you injected something else there this morning, which was just so beautiful and so meaning. And I want to thank you and your family for your beautiful spirit of forgiving and the kind of non-confrontational style that you have. I think it wins a lot of support for the cause in South Africa.
Thank you very much.
You have been it's the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, I think, knew exactly what they were doing when they cited you as your kind of work, not to say that the others are not important, but I think in terms of where we want to take the world, it seems to me it must go in the direction that Martin Luther King Jr., that Gandhi and others have pointed.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Now we're going to run.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Yeah.